Sorry, I'll look into that. I'm not sure why it wasn't recording automatically, but thanks for the heads up. Okay, so we're back to recording. So we're testing our model methods, including our edge cases. We want to make sure our methods handle different types of inputs, maybe some that aren't necessarily expected, but could come up. So for example, if we have a average song length method, what happens if the artist has no songs? So we're going to build this setlist app for this first couple weeks here, and we're going to add some artists and songs. We need to consider something like this. Okay, we can average the length of the song, but if we don't have any songs, what does it do? Does it return nil? Does it return 0? Does it throw an error? What should happen? And then we're also going to add SimpleCov, and we're going to check our model coverage by running rspec spec models, and we're going to open up that coverage index file, and I'll show you all how to do that. So anyway, oh yeah, one last bullet point here. So SimpleCov, did you all use SimpleCov in Mod 1? Yep. So SimpleCov is just that. It is simple. So SimpleCov is a good tool for tracking your test coverage, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your models are fully covered. And I think I'm going to hold off on shoulda metrics for today. So yeah, that's like a very brief intro into model testing. Up next, I'm going to put this into practice and add a little model testing into Task Manager. Before I do that, any questions coming up so far? Yeah, Joanna.
Hi, Brian. This was kind of silly, but when we say testing and isolation, can you clarify like what we mean by isolation? Like an isolation from what?
Yeah, from other parts of the app. So maybe, I don't know necessarily how much you talked about this in Mod 1, but there's a type of test that kind of tests things in isolation. Can I get a hand raise from anybody? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Richard?
Yeah, I think you're referring to mocks and stubs, right?
Not quite.
Kinda?
Mocks and stubs are close. Mocks and stubs help us remove those kind of dependencies, but we would be using mocks and stubs in order to achieve a specific type of testing. Molly?
I suppose you mean unit testing versus integration testing. We talked a little bit about at the end of Mod 1.
Exactly, yeah. So when I say testing things in isolation, I'm referring to unit testing. So I would say, like, what is the smallest chunk of working functionality, which typically in object-oriented programming is a single method? Can I test just that in isolation? Can I test that single unit? Does that clear it up, Joanna?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions so far? I think the first, I think I made a slight mistake. That first slide, this was some notes that I had taken. This is really the key chunk of information, the overview of model testing here. So sorry about that. Jameson?
So in our task manager exercise, we were doing operations to interact with the database to create tasks, but they weren't models, they were controllers. So can you speak to whether those need tests or like the differentiation between model testing and then like controller testing?
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and pull up Task Manager. And can I have everybody do the same thing on your end? So go ahead and open up your Task Manager app. I'll stop sharing while we do this. Okay, so I've got Task Manager pulled up on my end. And I'll go ahead and share so we can look at this as we talk about it. So let me also stash my changes that I've made. So this should be similar. It should be exactly what you wrote for your code. So Jameson, can you say what you were talking about one more time?
So when you were describing model testing, you were describing tests that check database operations to some regard. We did that with the create method, but it's technically a controller. Does the same concept apply to like those methods? Are they
Gotcha.
the same as like model methods? You know what I mean?
Yes, I think so. So for our controller methods, we do not unit test our controllers. So we are not going to test these individual methods inside of our controllers. The only thing that we really unit test in Mod 2 is our models. The controllers are going to be tested through our feature tests, which are going to be our integration tests. So feature tests kind of take everything integrated together. So as a user, can a user visit a page and see what they want to do, or can they fill in a form to create a new task? That's an example of an integration test versus a feature test, versus a model test would be, can this model appropriately change this data in the database? Very small. So we wouldn't test this whole method. Does that clear it up?
Yeah, that was really good to hear the clarification.
Welcome. Other questions so far? Can go back over to my slides here. Alex?
So Jameson's question brought up an interesting thing for me. I didn't realize that controllers and models were different, and maybe I misread or didn't read something I was supposed to. Are there going to be things that look like that aren't controllers and aren't models that I should be aware of, like things that all look like in Mod 1 would have been the exact same steps, but now are different?
So I'm going to pull up these two side by side. So I've got controller and model on the left. So Alex, can you clarify for me, when you say like things that look like that, what are you kind of picking up on here? Are you picking up on the class definition?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that it looks like the class and then the methods. Like I wouldn't, like in Mod 1 and like if any, maybe this is like just an Alex F problem, but I just would have thought that on line 1 and both of those, it was just like a name that we chose and that was it. And they were both the same thing. But in this, it seems like they are different things, or maybe I'm misunderstanding.
So maybe this will clear it up. What you need to pay attention to with both of these classes. And so in Mod 1, you make a class, right? And then it's a Ruby class. In Mod 2, we make specific types of classes, which can be controllers and models. And there's something in this class definition that indicates that it is a controller or a model, and that is that they inherit from application controller and application record. Did you all cover inheritance in Mod 1 briefly? Cool. So you at the very least are familiar with the syntax here. So this caret or this little less than symbol indicates we're inheriting from. So if you inherit from application controller, that is what makes this a controller. If you inherit from application record, that is what makes this a model. And we'll get into a little bit more about like MVC, model view controller. We have a dedicated class for that. So I understand like it's probably still going to be fuzzy for right now, but let's push forward a little bit further and see if we can't clear it up a little more. Jameson?
Just to clarify, I don't think we ever did integrated testing in Mod 1. We only did unit testing.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. Was your final project Black Thursday or the group project Black Thursday?
The group project was.
Yeah, so in Black Thursday, did you have like a method that used other methods?
Yeah, we had like a main method and we had like helper methods within the same class.
And did you test that like main method?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that's a type of integration testing. You're taking one method that integrates two other helper methods or three or four other helper methods. That's kind of a form of integration testing. Also, you can look at something as an integration test or a unit test, depending on your perspective. So a method could be an integration of two smaller methods, but then that method could then be integrated into a larger method, kind of like a big Russian nesting doll. So if you think of like a Russian nesting doll where like the dolls go inside of each other, the middle doll is both the outer container for two smaller ones and it's a part of a larger one. So depending on your perspective, it could be a unit or integration test. Does that help?
Yeah, and then in this case, with the models and controllers, those nesting dolls can be in two separate places. But we're testing the whole stack, if you will.
Can you say that one more time?
So you had the analogy of nesting dolls
Mhm.
as being helper methods for a main method. Is the case that we would test methods, for example, in the controller, just one like shell, another shell would be the model, another shell could be the view, and then your test, your integrated test will be the whole thing, right?
Yes, exactly. The catch is we only do unit testing for models and not for controllers. So in mod 2, we're kind of expanding on your like use of testing a little bit. So in mod 1, probably the mantra was like test everything. Everything needs to be tested, 100% testing, nothing can be untested. In mod 2, it's a little bit looser where we say, okay, the models need to be fully 100% tested, but for other things, we want it to be very well tested, but it doesn't need to be 100% tested. And then once you get into mod 3, you'll probably feel that loosening a little bit more. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions or thoughts coming up so far? This is all really great background. Noah.
This may be just where we're going, but I'm looking at that model and it doesn't seem to have any content in it. And so I'm curious how we're going to find what it is that we're attempting to test, since at least at this point, it seems like it's only inherited things.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do right now is I am going to invent something so that we can test it. Yes, you are right. Because we don't have anything in this class right now, I wouldn't really care if there was a model test or not, because there's nothing to test in here. So even though a task can do things like you can use a task to find something, you can use a task to destroy a task, you can use this class to do a couple things, this is all built-in behavior that we're inheriting from this application record. So you don't need to test things that are kind of built into models. So I'll say that one more time. You don't need to test inherited behavior, such as create, destroy, update is another one right here, find. All right, so that was a great discussion. Let's put it to practice and let's do some model testing here. So what I want to do, let's go ahead and do let's try to do a little bit of code along with the understanding that if you get lost at any point, please feel free to ask any questions, and I will give you, I'm going to try and leave a good chunk of work time at the end for us to kind of all get practice with this. So in order to add RSpec to our app, we're going to need to add it to our gem file. So if you're using Atom or VS Code, I want everybody to hit Command T to open up this fuzzy finder. This is a very helpful shortcut that you might not have used in mod 1. In mod 1, we don't have a ton of files and folders. We kind of have maybe in Black Thursday, you had 10 to 20 classes and tests. But in Rails, we've got a lot of folders. So this fuzzy finder is really great for finding a file by name with the Command T shortcut. So I can type in here gem file and hit enter, and this will take me directly to my gem file. So that's a very helpful command. I want everybody to find some good places to practice that. I'm going to go down in this gem file to where it says development test. And I'm going to add here gem rspec-rails. Alex?
I noticed when we added pry, it said your gem file should look like this. And I noticed in the development, I think, section, I didn't change anything, but on the example, there was more stuff in development that I didn't put in. And I mean, everything seemed to work fine because it didn't say in the instructions to tinker with that specifically.
Yeah, that should be fine. You don't need to worry about that. With some of that stuff like Spring and Web
Mhm.
Console, yeah, that's okay. You don't need to worry too much about that. Okay, so I've added RSpec Rails here, and let me just do a quick double check. I don't think I'm going to need any more gems for this lesson. Let me just double check that. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and add simple cov as well. So I'll say gem simple cov. And so now that we've changed our gem files, what we need to do is we need to run bundle from the command line. And you should, hopefully you get some green output here. So anytime you change your gem file, you should run bundle. The gem file is essentially saying, I want to include this gem in my project. Bundle or bundle install, they do the same thing. So you might see bundle install, you might see just bundle. They're just synonyms. Bundle says, look at the gem file and install all the gems that we're going to need. So this goes through and installs RSpec Rail and simple cov if we didn't already have it. I already had it because I've installed these before, but you all, it might take a little bit longer for you to install. So now that we've got those gems installed from the command line, we're going to run Rails G RSpec :install. So this is just a special command. You run it one time and go ahead and hit enter on your end. I'll go ahead and do the same. And we'll see that it creates some files and folders for us. So this is just at the beginning of your Rails app, you run this command one time and it creates these files and folders for you that we're going to need later. Natia?
Can you repeat that command we're supposed to run?
Yeah, it's right here. It's Rails G RSpec :install. Mark?
I think I got it. It says could not find generator RSpec :install.
Mm-hmm. So make sure that you have RSpec Rails in your gem file and that you run bundle from the command line. Any other issues coming up so far? Mark, did that work for you?
No, it didn't. I did run bundle. It seemed to work, but oh, maybe I didn't save it. Never mind.
That might be it. All right. So I'm going to keep going. I will leave some time at the end here to help if anybody gets lost. Okay, so now that we've got this new spec directory here, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So this creates this new folder spec, which is where all of our tests are going to live. It also creates these other files here, Rails helper and spec helper. At the top of the Rails helper.rb, so open up Rails helper, go to the very top, and we're going to do require simple cov. And then underneath that, simple cov.start. So this is just simple cov setup. So this is at the top of this Rails helper file. Richard?
Is it just convention to put it in Rails helper rather than the spec helper? The simple cov?
This is what the simple cov instructions say. So if you looked at the GitHub page, the README, I'm just following their instructions there. So you probably, I assume that it has to be here because spec helper is required right here. So I think simple cov needs to start before anything else is required. So I believe that's how it works.
Okay, I was just making sure because in the other in mod 1, it was in the spec helper. I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah. Did you? Well, you didn't have a Rails helper in mod 1, so
Right. Okay.
yeah, that's probably why. So now if everything is set up properly, we should be able to run rspec from the command line, and we should be able to get to 0 examples, 0 failures. All right, so I'm gonna go a little bit, try to go a little bit faster here. So yeah, again, if anybody falls behind, that's okay. We'll have plenty of time to catch up at the end. So in order to start my model testing, I'm going to make a directory under my spec folder for models. And we do want this folder to be called models because by calling it models, these tests are, our spec sees them as model tests. So it does affect how the tests run based on what the folder is that the test is nested under. And then inside that model test, I'm going to touch spec models task underscore spec.rb. And I'm going to go ahead and open up, and that's going to be my blank test file. In our tests, both model tests and the other type of tests, which are feature tests, we're always going to require the Rails helper. So we need to require the Rails helper at the top of every test, or else it won't work. And then underneath that, we're going to say rspec.describe. And I'm going to describe this task class. So I'm not going to wrap it in a string or anything. This is, you can even see it's highlighted in yellow. I would refer to this as a constant in Ruby. Anything with a that starts with a capital is a constant. So we're describing this task constant. And I can optionally put in here type model. As I said before, actually, I'll take out that do end. As I said before, because it's nested under the models folder, rspec will see this as a model test, but you can also explicitly say that it's type model. So nothing wrong with being explicit. I usually leave this out, but I'll leave it in here just for this first time. And then we'll give it our do end. Can I get everybody to give me like thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down, like how familiar is this to you? So like, yep, I got this, super familiar, and I don't know, kind of familiar, I've never seen this before. Cool, okay, that's very helpful. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and write our first test, and we're gonna TDD a method for this task class. So I'm going to make a section here. Did you all use describe blocks in mod 1? Cool, so we're familiar with those. So I'm gonna make a section here for instance methods because we're gonna make an instance method. And inside that, I'm gonna make another section for my method, which I'm going to call pound laundry question mark. So I'm imagining, and I want to TDD a method that will tell me, is this task a laundry task? So it's going to do something like, if the title or the description contains the word laundry, then it will return true. If it doesn't, then it will return false. And we'll try to make it case insensitive and do some fun things. Lee.
Is there a reason why you would do describe over context for the block like on line 4? I don't know if it was, I didn't know if there's a specific reason for that here.
As far as I know, they do exactly the same thing. So just to simplify my tools, I just always use describe. I do see people use context from time to time. I don't use it very often. functionally, I think they are exactly the same.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we've got this imaginary laundry method, and let's write our first test for it. So I'm going to say it returns true if the title is laundry. And so inside this test, we're going to need a task to call this method on. We're going to need an instance to call our instance method. So I'll say task equals capital T task dot create with an exclamation mark here or a bang on the end. I'll just leave that there for now. We'll circle back to it. And I'll say the title of this task is the exact string laundry. And the description doesn't really matter. We're not testing this. I'll just say it's clean the clothes. So now that we have a task object, I would expect that when I call task.laundry ? This should be true. I could also do equal true here, but I just kind of like the way it reads with, I expect this to be true. And that is going to be my first test for this laundry method. So I want to pause here. What questions do y'all have? And while you're thinking on that, I'll run RSpec and get my first failure. So a couple hands. Let's go to Alex.
Yeah, so I think in mod 1, like some of the class used the describe and context blocks and some didn't. I'm one of the party people that did not. And so I kind of brain dumped the point of the pound sign hashtag thing. And like what the point of like the describe and then like that basic structure. If you could give me like a brief reminder, that would be dope.
Sure. So describe blocks help us organize our tests. So if I have describe instance, then describe instance methods here, this would be a section of my tests. Everything nested under this describe block would be an instance method test. We're going to add other, I'll just go ahead and add it now and leave it blank. We're going to have other sections that I mentioned earlier, like we're going to test relationships. We're also going to describe, we're going to do validation tests later. So this is just kind of helping me, like once my test file gets really big, just helps me organize them. And then the practical thing is that if you're using Atom or VS Code, you can actually collect these. So I could just say all of the instance methods tests, let's just smush those together so I don't have to look at them. So that's nice. Does that help out? The describe blocks don't really do anything. They just help us organize. Yeah. Jermaine?
This is just visually, syntax-wise, if you keep a space between the object and expect, just knowing if it's a commonality for Rails between Ruby.
Like that?
Yeah, I don't know if there's preference for you.
Yeah, I do like to add in a space here. What this kind of separates the test out for me in terms of the setup and then the expectation. So first line here is just the data that we're setting up. And then the line 9 here, this is the actual expectation. So I do this pretty frequently, but I would say it's not like a point of emphasis for us. It's just kind of like a nice thing. Nitya, oh, I saw your hand go down. Are you good? Cool. Aaliyah.
For line 7, when we're doing task.create, is that using the create method we have in our controller, or is it just happen to be the same name?
So it just happens to be the same name. This is a method. So the way that I would kind of think about this is, okay, we have a task class and we're calling .create on that. I kind of think of the dot as like it's gluing those two things together. It's connecting, it's attaching the create call to the task class. So if we look in the task class, I'll just pull it over to the right here. There's no method called create in here. So what that tells me is that this must be something that we're inheriting through application record. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So it does get confusing because a lot of things are named the same. And eventually that will be like helpful. It'll be like, oh yeah, just conventionally that's what this is called. But as you're learning, it's confusing because everything's named the same. Let's go to Lawrence.
So previously when we were organizing in RSpec, we'd be doing it by method. So in this instead, we're testing them by what? So I'm sorry, I guess then the relationship section would be, okay, I just answered my own question. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm glad you figured it out. Gunnar.
Yeah, hi. I have a question. So I guess this is more or less on the lines of the server, because I just ran this RSpec and I usually turn off my server like when I'm done, like on post or for what's it called? Postgres, like when I'm done with for the day. Should I constantly be keeping my server on, or is it one where like you turn it on at the beginning of the day, turn it off at the end of the day, or does it matter?
So like if I click on this little elephant up here and I'll see Postgres is running, this is what you're referring to?
Yeah, because like when I ran that RSpec after everything, I know it's because it can't connect to my server. It has no connection. So I'm wondering, I guess, should I have my server actively on, or is it like turned off when I'm not using it, turn it off at the end of the day, turn it on at the beginning of the day?
You don't need to worry about turning this on or off. If you want to, you can. If for whatever reason, like your computer restarts and your server is running, your Postgres server, that can cause problems, but they're typically pretty easy to fix. You do not need to be stopping and starting this very frequently at all.
Cool.
Ideally, you can just start it right now, and for all of Mod 2, it's just running and you don't need to worry about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Regina.
I don't know if this is going to make sense, but like how much of this is like doing something right now? It's just like, I feel like a lot of these classes are inheriting, but I can't seem to find like the base class where everything's coming from. I don't know. I just like it I don't know. I guess, is it okay that I'm confused? Oh.
Yes. And let me see if this helps at all. So we're inheriting from application record right here. And if you want to take a look, I can use my fuzzy finder here. So Command T and look up application record under application record.rb. And this is where that class lives. So if you want to take a look at that some more, you can. But I will say, yes, it's okay if you're confused, and I would expect that. And our first week or two is really going to be spent like getting used to just all of the Rails things. There's just a lot of things here. You really can't do much. You can't like isolate very well in Rails. It's kind of like it's all just working together, or none of it's working together. So this first week or two is going to be, okay, we'll do a lot of things, but then let's like circle back and really try to understand what we did.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Natia.
So is now when we would discuss errors we're getting, or should we wait until like the end?
Let's hold off on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Caleb.
Hey, Brian. I noticed you included a bang right after the create. I was curious if that's because that is how the method is written, or are you overwriting something in your table, or why it necessitates that?
So the bang is really helpful because it will tell me if for whatever reason this could not be created. So if I run this, I'm going to get undefined method laundry, which makes sense. I haven't built the method yet, so we're TDDing. But if I misspelled title, like I just forgot the E, it will say active model unknown attribute error. So it's throwing an error here, unknown attribute title without the E for task. So it's essentially saying, hey, there's an issue with that. Watch what happens if I take out the bang. This might actually not do anything differently. Yeah, so I'm actually still going to get an error from this, but with other types of mistakes you might make, it might fail silently. So this line might not be doing what you want, but you might not see it. So it's really just, hey, if anything goes wrong, let me know about it.
That's awesome. Should we kind of implement that as best case?
Yeah, I would recommend that you do this in your tests, but not in other parts. So I'll just leave that right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I'm gonna pause on questions for right now, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill out this method, and then I'll give you all a little bit of work time. We can do more questions. So let me run my RSpec again. And my error is going to be undefined method laundry for my task instance right here. So, okay, no method, let's go make it. So def laundry question mark. So now that I have that TDD, I'm going to run it again, see if I can get past that error. And we get expected true got nil. So that makes sense. We want this method to return true when the title is laundry, but an empty method just returns nil. So that's not great. So then in here, we can say if title equals laundry, and there's a couple ways I could do this, but I'm going to go with this. Then we can return true. And let's just end that right there. And now we're passing. That's great. So that's great. But we probably want to have an else in here. We probably want to say like else if it's not laundry, then we want to return false. And so let's just run that again and make sure it's still working. And it is working, but look what happens to my coverage here. Now my coverage is down at 97%. And if I open that up, if I open coverage index.html and bring that over here and click in there, we can see that the line that's not covered is that return false statement. So the point of me showing you this is really to just emphasize this point that we want our models to be fully covered. So that doesn't mean that every method should have a test. It means that every method should be fully tested. So for example, this method we have a test for when this method returns true, but we would also want to say it returns false if the title is not laundry, something like this. So we could just copy the same test over here, change the title to like groceries and oops. And we'll say need to eat. And then we would expect this to be false. And now we'll run that. And now we're back up to 100% coverage. So the point here is that our methods, typically like one test for a method is good. That's like the bare minimum, but we usually want to have multiple tests for each method. We want to test the different things that the method could do. If the method could only do one thing, what would be the point of the method? Like it's pretty static. We want to, our methods, we make methods to be dynamic. And so we want to test them with dynamic values. So what I'm going to do next is I am going to pull the lesson plan over here and just kind of take stock of where we're at. So we've been testing the task model. We've worked through some of this stuff right here. And this lesson plan actually got into like another test right here. But what I want you all to do is I want you all to go down to this practice section and essentially just copy these tests over. So if I'll show you, I'll take these and I'll copy the tests into my current tests. And I'm not sure if you all saw this in mod 1, but what happens when you have a, what happens when you have a test without a do or end block, it shows up as a pending test. And I think I might have too many do ends in here. Actually, sorry, let me do a little cleanup here. Yeah, so when you have a test like these without a block, it shows up as a pending test. Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down? Did you see this in mod 1? Some? Yeah, maybe. So anyway, go ahead and copy these over and see if you can fill them out yourself. So for example, can you make this method work when, can you make it work case insensitive? Can you make it work when it merely contains the word rather than equals the word? So let's go ahead and stay on this Zoom call and go ahead and get to work on that. And I'll go ahead and take y'all's questions. Regina.
Where did you say to copy and paste that from?
So this is in the lesson plan. It's linked in the calendar, and I'll go ahead and just drop it in the chat just for ease.
Thank you.
There you go. That's in the chat now. Richard.
I noticed that the title for the task wasn't an @ like, how does it know that that variable belongs to that object? Like line 3 in the task, like if title rather than like if @ title.
Yeah, that's a really
I did
good
it
question.
with @ title and it failed, but it worked with just the title.
Yeah, the way that I would think of this is imagine that there were adder readers here for all of your attributes. So like there's an adder reader for, title
okay.
and description. And
I
that's
see.
an example of one of the things that we inherit.
Okay, that makes sense.
And in fact, in older versions of Rails, you actually had to manually put these adder readers in here. So there's like adder readers behind the scenes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Noah.
I got an answer to the question in the Slack. I'll lower the hand.
Gotcha. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Is that okay?
I had this error about I can look it up. Essentially I needed to do a gem cleanup, which I haven't done yet. Ambiguous specs. I was getting an error about ambiguous specs, or a warning, not really an error. And I just hadn't seen that before.
Is that something that
unresolved or ambiguous specs during gem specification?
Yeah, is that something that you figured out or you're still trying to figure
out? I feel like I've got a hot tip that I'm going to try. It says in the thing to use gem cleanup, and that is confirmed by somebody else, but I'm not quite clear on the source of that kind of error, I guess. So that would be a good follow-up question for you. It's like, why would I be having to run a gem cleanup? Do I have more than one copy of a gem in my gem file or something?
Yeah, I don't know. Are you seeing this when you're running RSpec?
I am, yeah.
Try to do bundle exec RSpec like that I have it on my screen there.
Oh, okay.
Try that.
That it doesn't show up when I do bundle exec RSpec.
Yeah.
Right.
So
okay.
I would just recommend, this is something that happens every once in a while. So we can continue to talk about like the gem file and just like what exactly that does. But the gem file is used by Bundler to manage all of the versions of your gems. So if it says ambiguous something or something or other, I would take that to mean that it doesn't know exactly which versions of gems to pick. So if you just run RSpec, you're not going through Bundler. You're actually just telling your computer, hey, find a version of RSpec for me to run. Versus if you say bundle exec RSpec, you're telling Bundler, which manages all of our versions, hey, you run RSpec, and Bundler is going to look in the gemfile.lock for RSpec, which I believe would be this specific version of RSpec.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
So I typically always run bundle exec RSpec just because I never know when this issue is and is not going to pop up. Another way of saying that is that RSpec will work some of the times, bundle exec RSpec will always work. Alex.
Yeah, I am getting 0 failures and 0 examples. I'm not really sure if I'm maybe writing it in the wrong spot. I'm pretty sure I am, but
So a couple reasons that could happen. One reason is double check that your test ends in _spec.rb,
that my test
your test file.
file. Like,
Let's switch screen shares. Would you mind screen sharing?
yeah, not at all.
Let's do it.
Apologies in advance for everything crammed in the same spot. I mean, maybe it's something like, I guess I'm just curious as to, maybe I'm missing something.
So I see that you're inside the spec models directory. Could you cd up 2 levels? And run rspec from here.
Cool. I did dig,
Yeah,
my own defense, I did dig down when I was trying to figure out why nothing was working. Okay.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's-
and so the general rule here is that we always want to run our tests from the root directory of our Rails app,
Cool.
which is where you are right now.
Right. Okay. Sweet.
Let's go to Natia.
Okay, so I'm getting 2 errors. Should I show you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Here's the first one. So it doesn't like RSpec. It doesn't believe that RSpec exists, is what I'm gathering from this.
Yes, this is a tricky one. Your S is lowercase.
You're kidding.
It's very
This?
small. Yep.
That's it.
Yep. And I am not a wizard. I have just done this so many times that now I know it's one of the things to look for.
Method. Oh yeah, undefined method model.
Yep.
So,
So
it should
that would be
mo-
your model just needs you need to make it a symbol.
Oh,
So it should be a symbol for model. Yeah.
okay. So then my other one, let's see. I think this is going to be more difficult. Or potentially unsolvable. If I can figure out how to get the screen to share. 2 seconds. Where's screen sharing? There it is. This is not something that you deal with, right?
Yeah, so that's PG connection bad. That's telling me this is something wrong with your database setup. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to figure this one out right now, unfortunately.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's go to Lawrence.
Just getting, and I'm not sure why, odd error. It's telling me that on line 8, I've got it's expecting end, but I've got do and then end here. So I'm not sure why it expects an end here. Oh.
Yeah, so typically with, you got it.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. Let's go to Joe.
Yeah, I was just, I wrote the test for if it does not contain laundry. And it is giving me true. And I'm not sure why.
Let's look at it.
So there's that. Let me pull my terminal over. Or it's expecting false, but it's giving me true.
Yeah, does anybody, can anyone from the crowd answer this? Go ahead and unmute.
The way you're doing your conditional isn't right. Basically, you're saying if title is true or if description equals like laundry. What you need to have is basically if title equals laundry or if description equals laundry on both sides of the pipes.
Oh, because it was working for my test for title and description, but it was then it failed for this one. So I do this equal laundry on both sides of the pipes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If you could hold there for 1 second, Joe, and let me draw on your screen. When we have these pipes for OR, essentially each side is its own condition. So right side here, this condition looks good. Left side, this condition is just title, which would always be true because the title is a string and a string is always truthy in Ruby.
Okay, so no matter what for title, it's just going to return true the way it's written.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And what you're doing is you're thinking of it like in English. Yeah. If the title or the description is this, that's not the way that Ruby works, unfortunately.
Okay.
Alex. Good. Emmy.
So when I was trying to get my task manager to download, I had to uninstall and reinstall a lot of stuff. So now I don't have RSpec, and I tried gem install RSpec, and it says command not found, and I'm not sure how to go at that.
Gotcha. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Okay.
Says RSpec. Can you do bundle exec RSpec? It looks like you spelled it correctly.
Sorry.
Just shout out, I had the same problem and had to run bundle install and then it worked.
Yeah, do a bundle install. And you don't need to say RSpec, just say bundle install.
Okay.
So the way it works is when you run bundle install, bundler looks at your gem file. So you should have RSpec Rails in your gem file.
Okay.
Could you go to your gem file just so we could double check that?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I think you're good to go, Emmy. Like I said earlier, I just recommend always running bundle exec RSpec. It's always going to work. So I think you're okay.
Okay. Because
Yeah, and if you do,
sorry.
if you do want to run RSpec, like for instance, you want to go back to a mod 1 project, you should be able to do gem install RSpec, and that will just install it outside of bundler.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think I have Lawrence and Joe P's hands up. Was that from before, or do y'all have questions? Doing well, cool.
Sorry, still running into that strange, I'm sure it's really obvious. It's still telling me
Syntax
on line
error.
8. So I've counted, I've got 3 do's and 3 ends, and then do and do and do and do end. So I don't know why it thinks it should be done at line 8. Is this correct?
Lawrence, I'm just gonna shout out. So I had the same issue with the pending tests, and I went through and moved my end up, but it the error just went away when I put my end above my pending tests. And so it's something in there is I don't know what was wrong with it, but it solved my problem.
So you just put them up here?
I commented those out and removed it, and it's fine. So it's something in the bottom part is what's wrong, which maybe Brian might have an idea of why.
Yes, I think you're right. Was that Molly? Yeah, so
Yeah.
I see you have 3 ends at the bottom. Can you go back up to the top?
Yeah, I've got 3 do's.
Can you, on line 5, can you hover to the left and can you close out that all the way to the left? There should be a little arrow so you can collapse it.
Yeah.
This is helpful for hunting down these errors.
So all of them line up.
Oh, that is a good, who put Jameson? Yeah, it could be in the task model itself. Let's look at the task model. Yeah, it's your method that's not ended. That's what it is. Ugh. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you could hold on your screen share for a second. One piece of debugging here that this was bad of me. I should have done this. I didn't read my error very close. So what it did say line 8, but it said task.rb line 8. So we need to make sure I need to make sure that I'm checking the file name as well as the line number.
Right. Good to stop
Great.
sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this is we're about at the end of class here. Could I get a volunteer did anybody fill in their own test and get their method to pass? Can I get a volunteer? Jack?
Can you see it?
Yep.
Sorry. I will this over here. So I have, for a title, it'll return true or false if it's downcased and includes laundry. Same thing for description. And that'll pass on returns true if the title is laundry or includes it. And then
Very nice.
There's another one for ASIN sensitive.
Very nice. Does anybody have any questions on what Jack did here? Mark?
I was curious how to do the one with the contains the word laundry. How did that pass?
So
Oh, just the include
instead
piece.
of
Never mind.
equals laundry, I just took that out and added the include.
Got it.
So now if this whole title string includes laundry anywhere in it, it will return true.
Thank you, Ruby, for giving us nice string methods to work with. Excellent. So thank you, Jack. That looks awesome. If you want to see another version, if you look at the very bottom of the lesson plan, it should link to, it says you can find a completed version of the practice exercise, and there's a link to that branch. It's a branch called model testing on the Task Manager Rails complete repo. So if you want to see some answers, that's where you're going to find them. Does anyone have any last questions on model testing before we'll take a little bit of a longer break because we didn't really get a POM during that class, and then we'll do our project kickoff. But yeah, any closeout for model testing? All right, so that's about it for that class. As I said earlier, model testing really should connect back to what you learned in Mod 1. We are layering on this concept of the database. Our models are now connected to the database, so that there are some implications because of that. Rather than just doing a new, now we're doing a create to create an object. So there are some things that are different, but hopefully that feels very familiar to you. And Jameson tomorrow is going to talk to you more about databases and Active Record and just kind of how that all relates. So yeah, thank you all very much. Let's come back at 2:15. We'll take a little bit of a longer POM. We'll come back to the same Zoom, so you don't need to leave or anything, and we'll kick off the project.